And so Kelly Chatman, you also know I've asked you before, please recommend people. I'm happy to say that my son, Ben, recommended our speaker today. He lives in the Redeemer housing that was developed by the work that Jim was talking about. And he said, geez, Dad, if you could get him, it would be awesome. Unfortunately, Ben's on his way to the Superior National Hiking Trail right now, and he can't be here to enjoy the fruits of his own suggestions. But here's why I just adore Kelly Chatman. I met his wife while I was the chair of the board at Lutheran Social Service in Minnesota. And I know there are many people from LSS that are here today. And as I got to know him better, what I see is this entrepreneurial guy, a guy who's driven by his love for children. How many in the room grew up with 11 brothers and sisters? One of us? Yeah, it's Kelly. And he is just really driven by just a deep desire to see kids have that sense of hope and fairness. He's recognized nationally for his work in urban development. His career has been shaped by all sorts of endeavors inside the church, including working with wealthy Ivy League college-type students and then the poorest of the poor. He lives with it. He got on a public bus to come here today. He lives very near on the Glenwood neighborhood, works in the Glenwood neighborhood, excuse me. Please join me in welcoming one of the people I think is one of the most courageous community builders that we know. Please welcome Kelly Chatman.
Well, good morning. I feel like this is the moment of truth that I'm actually up here now. So thank you, Paul. Thank you, Wendy, for all your support in making this morning possible. I followed my wife to Minneapolis 15 years ago. I worked in Chicago for our denomination headquarters. I was directing our youth programs for the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. And my wife was recruited to serve as Executive Vice President and Dean for Diversity at Concordia University in St. Paul. And so I had about 6 months to interview and see where I might land. And I interviewed at different congregations, and suburban and urban. And this congregation, Redeemer Lutheran Church, came across my screen. Now, I went to college at Concordia University, but I never paid any attention to North Minneapolis. And so I interviewed at Redeemer, and I remember that after coming from Chicago and being on Glenwood Avenue, seeing Milda's Cafe, it felt kind of like a small town. And that was attractive to me. And so I wound up accepting the position of serving as pastor at Redeemer Lutheran Church on Glenwood Avenue. It's about a mile west of International Market Square on Glenwood Avenue. And I remember that scene of the neighborhood, but I had heard, part of what attracted me is I'd heard stories about the struggles of the congregation, or the struggles of North Minneapolis. But I also heard a story about Redeemer had just started a nonprofit called Redeemer Center for Life. And that nonprofit was populated by a number of members from Calvary Lutheran Church and other congregations. And almost as soon as the nonprofit was established, Milda's Cafe lost its lease. Now, Milda's Cafe was an anchoring business in the neighborhood in North Minneapolis during some of the toughest times. And so all of the energies went into saving Milda's. And again, this was before I started at Redeemer, but I heard the story about that board in the nonprofit, and the chair of that board was a man named Bobby Griffin. Bobby Griffin had just retired as the president of the pacemaker division of Medtronics. And that board, under Bob's leadership, they developed enough resource that they cleared some land and they built a brand new apartment building to keep Milda's in the neighborhood. Well, I heard that kind of witness, and I thought, well, if there's that kind of investment in fairness, sign me up. And so I came to Redeemer to serve as the pastor. And Redeemer at that time and the neighborhood, one of the first things I remember is that across the street there was a Sunnyside Cafe, And the owner of Sunnyside Cafe would complain about how people didn't frequent his business because there were young people outside and they were selling drugs. And so he said people were afraid to come to his business. And so what I did is there was a store, a popcorn shop that had been vacant. And I asked the owner of the popcorn shop, what would it cost to rent the popcorn shop? And the owner said $1,000 a month. I went to the congregation. The congregation said, sure, if you raise the money. And so we opened up that popcorn shop. It was called the Popcorn Palace. We renamed it the Peace Palace, and we started doing youth development, running an after-school program out of the popcorn shop. And again, we called it the Peace Palace. And as the children started coming to the Popcorn Palace, the Peace Palace, excuse me, then the parents started coming. And the more that there was a gathering of a positive community, the drug dealers moved further away to less conspicuous areas. And then we started doing cookouts, and we did a block party, and we began to gather the community. And so it became this way of communicating what Walter Brueggemann calls this sacred canopy, a place where everybody has a sense of that belonging and safety. And so what we began to do is to reframe what does it mean to be church. And I'm not here to preach with you, so, but that's okay too. But so what we did is we reframed what it means to be church. That when we talked about church, we say that everybody is welcome and everybody belongs. That's what we do when we open up our doors. And then we also did what the church talks about, the teaching of the church as catechesis. And we reframed that to mean that's about experience and exploration. And then the other thing that we talk about, discipleship, or we reframe that to mean fulfilling our potential to be the people of God. Now, you guys, if I was at church and you guys are looking as stoic as you are now, I'd try to get some amens going. But yeah, there you go. Thank you. So the point about this is that North Minneapolis is a stigmatized community. And there are North Minneapolises all over the place. And we hear a lot today about Black Lives Matter. We can't be hearing so much stuff right today and not know that there has to be some truth about something is going on in our society and our culture. And North Minneapolis is a place where a lot of those things are happening, where we have been framed, and we see it on the news all the time, about a glass that is always half empty. And so what we've been working on at Redeemer, and we have support from Mount Olivet and Westwood and Emmanuel. I mean, there's so many partners in this. So this isn't just about Redeemer, and it isn't just about the church, but it's about a community that says fairness is a community value. The story, one of my mentors is Bob Holtz, retired president at Concordia University in St. Paul. Bob grew up on a farm in Minnesota, and he talks about how when he was raised up on the farm, he would, to fill at home, he would raise chickens, and he would milk cows, and that's where he got a sense of his rootedness. And after he graduated from college and became a pastor, they sent him to New Guinea. And he tells about how when he was in New Guinea, and he was the first white person to be in the village, and what he began to do to fill a sense of his rootedness is that he started to raise chickens. And as those chickens became plentiful, what he did is he'd go throughout the village and he'd just hand out chickens to people. And then all of a sudden, after some time, some of the elders of that village came to him and they said that we have a problem with you giving out chickens to everybody in the village. We think you ought to just give chickens to people who are converts. Well, Bob was a good Minnesota boy, and he said, well, that's what the elders say, then that's what you do. So he stopped giving chickens to everybody. But after a period of time, he didn't feel comfortable with that. That didn't seem fair. And so what he did is, again, he started going across the village, and he started giving away chickens to people throughout the village. And after a period of time, the elders of that village came to him again. And they said, we want to know more about a God who cares enough to give chickens to everybody. So we're talking about fairness. We're talking about a picture of a God, and I don't care what your vision is. It's about a God and a reality that says everybody matters, that every life is valued, that in North Minneapolis, education should be as valued as it is in any other part of our state. That in North Minneapolis, transportation shouldn't just go from St. Cloud to North Minneapolis well, you know where I'm going with that. But there's a reality that we all share some. So when I think about the 7 F's, I think about how, to me, those all together come together to inspire. And so when I think about what I hope that my life is for and what good leadership really gets, it's that place of inspiration. So when I think of each of those F's, I think about how I look for somebody in one of those F's that inspires, whether it's fun or family or faith or whatever it is, so that there's something that I can shoot for. And so in North Minneapolis, what Redeemer has been blessed to do over the last 15 years is to ensure that Milda's Cafe has been in the neighborhood for more than 40 years. And now for 4 years, we've had the first bike and coffee shop in North Minneapolis in many years. And so it's a quality bike and coffee shop so that children in the neighborhood can have a place to gather and see what a healthy business looks like. And an example is Denitrik, who was a part of our program since he was in 7th grade. And Denitrik graduated with two of his roommates from North High School. And then Denitrik went to the University of Minnesota. And after 1 year at the University of Minnesota, Denitrik decided, I want to live in my community. So he came back, and we developed a program that we actually talked about with Jim Voss called Housing in Transition, so that young people would have housing, stable housing, so that they could have a place where they could learn how to manage their time and manage their money and manage their relationships. So Denitrik decided to come back and live in North Minneapolis while he continued to go to the University of Minnesota. Last year, Denitrik graduated from the University of Minnesota with a degree in retail. And Denitrik is the manager of the bike and coffee shop. There's another young man named Kendrick, who when he was in high school, our youth director asked the young people from the neighborhood, what do you have a passion for? And the young people said, well, we like to work on bikes. And so he started a program where the kids worked on bikes in the basement of one of our apartment buildings. And Kendrick last year graduated from Gustavus College. And today, Kendrick is one of the leaders in the bike shop, repairing bikes and role models. So it's important that young people who've been successful in college are now back in their community modeling for people that college is a reality, that running a business is a reality, that being on time. Angela is our youth director, and now we're doing entrepreneurship to help young people learn workforce development. And it's the increments about being on time, being accountable. So it's accessible in a neighborhood for too many years has not had those businesses, have not had those role models. We have them in their families, but because of the lack of jobs and opportunities for people to actually have those models where people have that access and can see that. All right, can I get an amen? Yeah. Okay, all right. So another story I meant to tell early on was when we opened up the popcorn shop. There were 2 Mexican little girls that were in foster care, and they would come and were part of that initial after-school program in the Peace Palace. And one day, one of the little girls said to the youth director, she asked her, said, "Is this a church or a magical place?" And so when I think about inspiring, I think about what we do, it's to be engaged in the lives of people where we just do what we take for granted in so many of our communities. So it's not always a pretty picture. So Paul mentioned that his son Ben he's one of 10 young adults that are living in housing in our community. Young adults who have recently graduated from college, and as part of their rent exchange, they commit to work in the community 5 hours a week. So that kid's 24/7, see college graduates, have these positive role models living in the context of their community. But the way that that started is that Redeemer, like any other, what happened was it was a foreclosure crisis. And right across the street from the church, a duplex went into foreclosure. And the next thing we knew, there was a big piece of plywood that was simply nailed on that house, and it was spray painted a 1-800 number for sale. Now, for our congregation and for me, a lot of times we're benign. We just go on and it's just, oh, that's just the way we get treated. But at this particular time, the fact that they didn't have the courtesy to put up a regular sign, I realized my wife and I, we live in Maplewood, and we live in a 3-car garage home or whatever, a nice home, nice neighborhood. But I realized there's no way that they would put up a piece of plywood and spray paint in my neighborhood. How about your neighborhood? So that's the kind of thing that calls for our response. When we talk about fairness, there are just so many ways that we become anesthetized to the ways that it's just business as usual. So I thank God that I am in a congregation supported by a larger community that is about fairness, that says that everybody matters, that says that neighborhoods that have been stigmatized can become magical places if we invest ourselves, if we dare to be the ones who would inspire, if we would dare to be the ones who would say that we believe in a God, however you define that to be, that cares enough to have chickens for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wow. I heard something that directly relates to why my firm exists, which is connecting the concept of fairness to fulfilling the potential of people. I thought that was really powerful. That's an idea that will come back, I guarantee you. So here's what I'd like you to discuss for the next 7 to 10 minutes. That is, what do you see going on in your world, downstream of you, where you are executing the idea of promoting fairness by fulfilling the potential of the people around you? What are you doing to help fulfill the potential of the people around you? Ready, set, go. Great conversations happening. Thank you for participating. Let me introduce you again one more time to Kelly Chatman. It's so fun to see how people approach the opportunity to speak with the Good Leadership crew about what they do for a living. I was so moved by many of the different things that you said, and I'm really looking forward to hearing more from you. Let's start with the first question here, which is, what do you do for fun?
Yeah, that may be the hardest one. I love to fish or be around water. I'm not a very good fisherman. And that's kind of it. And vicariously, I like to be around people who are having fun.
So that your people around here have fun, so we'll invite you back. Okay?
Great,
yeah,
wonderful.
Yeah.
You heard him, he said that.
Yeah. When did you first come up with the idea that you might want to be a pastor? What's that story?
You know, I'm not sure when I wanted. I know that I love God and I love people, and I remember in high school I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, and I just imagined myself at the assembly line, because that's what you did if you were successful in Detroit, and that I would have conversations with people about God and the assembly line. So the other thing I knew at an early young age, thanks for the question, before I ever went to church, I saw Martin Luther King on television.
Oh, wow.
And I imagined what I saw Martin Luther King doing is what pastors did and what the church did. And so that shaped my idea of what church is more than anything else. And so I think it really goes back to that moment.
That's amazing. Yeah, thank you. Well, you're obviously really successful at rallying people to a common cause. It's obvious just hearing from you and being in your presence. What's the hardest part about doing business in the church?
Oh, gosh. to be honest, it's entitlement, where people in the church feel like it's supposed to be the way that it was when they were growing up, and they have little imagination for how it can be for people that are coming that are new.
So entitlement would be an antonym for fairness in this case.
Yeah. Openness.
Yeah, fascinating. Well, will you share with us just a little bit more about what the vision is? We've heard what you've done so far, but what's the vision for the Redeemer community?
We are applying now to receive tax credits to build 55 housing units, 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms on the block that we have acquired. And that will make it possible for people who are in the neighborhood to remain in the neighborhood by providing that affordable housing. So that's the immediate one. And the other is that to be able to embrace gentrification, that as development comes in, that it's successful development. So gentrification typically means that when new people come in, the older people that can't afford it are forced out. And it's a way that the new people protect their investment. But if we can make diversity something that's a part of positive investment, then people will want to keep the diversity. And so that really is the bigger vision. It's that sacred canopy where there's room for everybody.
Oh, that's outstanding. I also know a lot of people who are in your line of work, especially met them through my work with Lutheran Social Service. And there's this element that the caregiver doesn't often get the care that they need to keep the tank full. What do you do to keep your spiritual tank full?
Well, I go on retreats with some really bad people.
Scotland, maybe, huh? No,
that really is what I do, and this is, in all honesty, I'll be working my desk, and it's pretty monotonous, and the children are in the hallway, and I'll go and get a hug from a kid, and I'm ready to go. That really rejuvenates me. So that always works.
You might have a few visitors here soon, right? Yeah. Last question. How can we help you?
That's a dangerous question to ask me. Confront the mythology, the negative mythology about North Minneapolis, about people who are of a different color or race. So that's kind of more global, but if you do that, I think that'll raise the boat. Of course, we love support at our nonprofit. Actually, right now, we're doing a campaign with Thrivent, where we're one of 4 organizations that if you just text a certain number, we get a percentage of that campaign right now. And I wish I had the text information. Angela.
You'll give it to us because Aaron will be sending a note to all of you after this meeting today, so that's one of the ways that we can help, that's for sure.
That would be wonderful.
Outstanding. Well, as part of your speaking today, we have a $500 speaker honorarium for you. There's a letter that says that. Where would you like us to send that money?
Let me think. The nonprofit Redeemer Center for Life, which is the community outreach through which all these wonderful things are happening.
Outstanding. Thank you so much for being with us today. Yeah, thank you. Isn't this awesome?